Hello everyone, I'm Nazmeen Shah, a student of first year EM Pharmacy from the Department of Pharmacology studying at Government College of Pharmacy, Bangalore. So in this particular video, I'll be giving a seminar on the topic Western blotting. So this is done under Dr. Rajesh MS, who is an assistant professor at Government College of Pharmacy, Bangalore. So Western blotting, as at the end of this video, we will be able to recall the introduction of Western blotting, the principle involved in Western blotting, the procedure of Western blotting, uh, Western blotting, the detection methods, and the applications of Western blotting. So let's start with the introduction of Western blotting. From the term Western blotting, what does this blotting mean? So blotting is a technique by which a macromolecule such as DNA, RNA, or protein is resolved in a gel matrix, transferred to a solid support, and then detected with a specific probe. So this is here what when a sample of DNA, RNA or protein is given, that is it contains different types of DNA, RNA or protein. From this, when we have to detect a specific protein, so this can be done by the help of blotting technique. So in this technique, generally what is it is done is, first of all, the sample is first resolved in gel matrix, and then this result means separated. So these separated molecules are then transferred to a solid support, and then these are bind with specific probes which will help us to detect the protein that we want to detect, that is the target protein or the sample of interest can be detected by using this blotting technique. Next, this powerful technique allow us to identify and characterize specific molecules in a complex mixture of related molecules. That is what I said earlier, that is when a sample is given, that is complex mixture is given, it contains, that is a mixture that it contains different types of RNA, DNA or protein. From this we can identify and characterize specific molecule, that is the target molecule can be identified. So in blotting methods there are three types, that is southern blotting, by which we can detect specific molecules of DNA in a given mixture of DNA sample. Next is northern blotting. In this, we can detect specific RNA molecules, and the last one is western blotting. In western blotting, we can detect specific protein molecules. So let's see western blotting. So western blotting, it is also named as immunoblotting or protein blotting. It is named as immunoblotting because we use antibodies here. So this technique is also similar to that of ELISA. So it is a technique used to detect the presence of specific protein in a complex protein mixture. So when a mixture is given, in this we can identify a specific protein by the use of Western blotting. So this method, the Western blotting is widely used. This is widely used in areas like cell biology, molecular biology, virology and others. So why do we use this? It is a most common analytical tool. So for the detection of viral proteins, characterization of monoclonal and polyclonal antibody preparation, and in determining the specificity of immune response to a viral antigen. Now, Western blotting was introduced by Taubin in 1979. So this method was introduced in 1979, but it was not named as Western blotting. So the term Western blot was given in 1981. It was given by W. Neil Burnett. This method is now routinely used for the protein analysis. So let's see the principle of Western blotting. Western blotting is a rapid, sensitive assay for the detection and characterization of proteins. That is, it mainly this technique mainly revolves around the proteins, the detection, characterization of proteins, and this principle is uh, based on immunochromatography, where proteins are separated in polyacrylamide gel. So here we can see when a sample is given, it contains different proteins. So this protein is first separated by using SDS phase or polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. So here what happens is these proteins are separated by based on the molecular weight. So these separated proteins are then transferred onto a solid membrane, that it can be nitrocellulose membrane or PVDF membrane. So after the transfer, here this membrane is then treated with specific proteins, specific antibodies, that is primary antibodies and secondary antibodies. So when the treatment by the treatment of antibodies, specific proteins are binded to these antibodies. So these specific proteins can be detected by various detection methods. So this is the principle that is involved in the Western blotting. So now let's see the procedure of Western blotting. So in Western blotting, there are three main tasks. So first of all, it is first step involves the separation of proteins. So this is done by gel electrophoresis. Then the second technique involves the separated transfer of separated protein to a solid support. And the third technique and the third task is to specify the specific detection of target protein by appropriately matched antibodies. That is, we have to use matched antibodies here, and then this is used for the detection. After detecting, the target protein will be visualized as a band on the blotting membrane, X-ray film, or imaging system. So after all these steps, we will do detection. In the detection, we can see the specific protein has a band. So this can be seen on the blotting membrane or X-ray film or imaging system. So this is a pictorial representation. Here we see the cells or tissues are taken. These are homogenized and lysed. After this, the proteins inside them is released. So this is taken as sample lysate. So this sample lysate is carried out for electrophoresis. But that is, we here use SDS phage. So here the proteins are separated based on their molecular weight. After the separation, these proteins are then transferred to a membrane, that is nitrocellulose or PVDF membrane. After this, we uh, do specific probing by the use of primary or secondary antibodies, and then the detection methods are done. So let's see procedure step by step. So the first step is preparation of sample lysate. For the preparation of sample lysate, what we do is we take protein from all the sources. That is, it can be the protein can be taken from a single cell, or it can be taken from a tissue or extracellular matrices or biological fluids. So these proteins are then extracted, and then the protein extraction involves three distinct steps. The first one is cell lysis. In this, what we do is we break the cell membrane to release the proteins. So by here we can do this by using physical methods like ultrasonication or homogenization, or using chemical methods by the use of detergent, or by the use of biological methods like enzymatic digestion. After the lysis of the cell and the release of protein, this released protein is then isolated from the rest of cellular components. That is, the cell contains a lot of different things other than protein, that is like DNA, RNA, or other etc etc. From all of this, we separate protein. So this is done by centrifugation, DNase, and other lysis buffer uh, is used to remove the cell organelles, nucleic acid, polysaccharides, etc. After this protein isolation, we do protein purification. So after this, so the next step after obtaining the sample lysate is gel electrophoresis. That is, the proteins present in the sample are to be separated. So this separation is mostly done based on their molecular weight. So this can be done by using the method SDS phase electrophoresis. That is, sodium dodecyl sulfate polyacrylamide gel electrophoresis. So in this electrophoresis, we use phage. So this is used for the separation of protein, and SDS. Why we use SDS is here SDS is present in the gel and buffer solution, and also it is present in the sample. So it is used to denature the uh, protein molecules. So what happens is all the proteins will have some shape. That is, it can be primary. That is, can be secondary structures, primary tertiary structure, etc. So all of this shape will be linearized. So now all the proteins have same shape, and the other thing what SDS does, it uniformly binds to the protein, and all the proteins will have net negative charge, that is the charge of SDS. Uh, so now the only difference between all the proteins is the molecular weight, because the shape and the charge on the proteins present are same. So here we can see how the procedure of SDS phage. So first the sample. This sample contains proteins which has some structure with, and also it has intrinsic charge. So these proteins have bonds, disulfide and non-disulfide bonds. So in non-disulfide bonds, it can be ionic bonding, hydrogen bonding, etc. And also we can see disulfide bond. So this sample acid is heated with SDS. So heating with SDS, what happens is this folded protein will be linearized, and the intrinsic charge, because of the uniform binding of SDS, is converted to net negative charge. So the only difference is now is the molecular weight of the proteins. So in the next step, what we do is gel preparation. Here the gel is prepared by polymerization of acrylamide between the two glass plates. After the gel preparation, what we do is we take the gel and place it in electrophoresis chamber. So now in the gels, in the first in the first gel or the last gel, we place molecular weight markers. That is, here we place the proteins of known size, and in the other well we place sample, and after the placing of sample, we apply the voltage, and the electrophoresis is run for 45 to 60 minutes at 200 volts, or until the buffer reaches the bottom. So here what happens is the protein molecules which are smaller in size move faster, and the protein molecules which are larger moves slower, and hence here the separation of protein based on molecular weight is done. So after the separation of protein, what the second next step is protein transfer. So the protein has to be transferred from the gel to a nitrocellulose or nylon membrane. So why do we do this? The membrane used here can be nitrocellulose or polyvinyl difluoride. Why do we use these two specific membranes? Is because they bind to all the proteins equally. And next is, why do we do this protein transfer from the gel to a solid membrane? Because here the proteins will be immobilized, so it will be possible to detect the proteins on the membrane using specific antibodies. So this protein can be protein transfer is mainly done by using the procedure that is electroblotting. So by using electroblotting, it uses electric field to pull proteins from the gel onto PVDF or nitrocellulose membrane. So here, for the transfer of protein, we use electrical field. I'll explain the procedure in the next slide. Here the protein from within the gel onto the membrane while maintaining the organization they had within the gel. That is the gel when it is transferred. That is the protein when it is transferred from the gel to the membrane. It will be in the same configuration. That is, the separation will not change during the transfer. So this is based on electrophoresis step, where electric field is applied to move the negative proteins towards the positive electrode. That is, here we can see in electroblotting what we do is we take the gel onto one side, that is towards the anode side. We place the nitrocellulose or PVDF membrane, and we place filter paper, and then it is placed in the electrophoresis chamber. Towards the anode we have the membrane, and here we use a buffer which is of lower ionic strength, and here the buffer contains tris hydrochloride, glycine, and methanol. Here the glycine, why we use methanol is because the proteins here are in the gel are bind to SDS. So this methanol helps in the removal of SDS from the proteins, while the transfer of proteins onto the membrane. So this will increase the binding of the proteins with antibody. So next what happens is, after keeping this gel, this setup in the electrophoresis chamber in the buffer, the voltage is applied, and then the negatively charged proteins from the gel move towards anode. That is, from the gel it will then be blotted on the membrane, that is nitrocellulose or PVDF membrane. So this is the protein transfer. So next step is immunoblotting. That is, the transfer protein are now bonded with primary and secondary antibody. So this is called as immunoblotting. So before this immunoblotting, we do a step called blocking. So what it is immobilization of biomolecules on membrane and blocking the spaces not already occupied by the protein. That is, in a membrane there are only specific sites where the protein is attached. So the space where the protein is not attached is to be blocked. So why do we block this is to increase the specificity and sensitivity of the assay. So two main class of blocking agents is used. So these are proteins. For example, BSA, that is bovine serum albumin, or we can use non-fat dry milk. And we can also use non-ionic detergent, example Tween 20. So these are mostly used for blocking purpose. So what is blocking is, so this is the nitrocellulose membrane. Here the specific proteins are attached. So these are the areas where the protein is not binded. So we use nitrocellulose membrane because it binds to all the proteins equally. So this antibody is also a protein. There are chances that this antibody will come and attach to this nitrocellulose membrane, and this will result in false interpretation, and hence we have to block this. So this blocking can be done with non-fat dry milk or BSA. So after blocking, we do is the next step is antibody probing. That is, we incubate the proteins with first with primary antibody, and after the incubation of primary antibody, we wash the solution and then incubate with the secondary antibody. So here the secondary antibody not only acts as carrier of the label but is also used to amplify the emitted signals, because secondary antibody are most common polyclonal and can bind primary antibody at different epitopes simultaneously. So here the carrier we can use is alkaline phosphate or horseradish peroxidase. So these are example for chromogenic substrate. There are also other substrates that can be used for detection, that is bound to secondary antibody. It can be fluorophore, biotinylated secondary antibodies, radioisotopes. So here we use primary and secondary antibodies. So this can be synthesized, or it can be uh, obtained from laboratory. So how it is obtained is, the specific antigen is injected in the rat or mice. So this in response to antigen produces antibodies. So these antibodies are isolated, and these are used as primary antibodies. So again is for this antibody we produce a secondary antibody. So these antibodies can be produced from rat or rabbit or humans, etc. So now the next step after the incubation with primary and secondary antibody is detection. So the detection can be done based on fluorescence, chromogenic or radioisotopic detection. So enzyme detection or fluorescence based detection. In enzyme detection, what we do is the secondary antibody is attached to um, to a to a enzyme which will react to a substrate and then give light. In fluorescence spectrum detection, what we do is the secondary antibody is attached to a fluorophore. This, when kept in UV visible light, will give a light source of specific wavelength. So first of all, let's see colorimetric detection. It is a sensitive and inexpensive method. Here what we do is the secondary antibody is attached to the enzyme. So this enzyme can be HRP, that is horseradish peroxidase, or alkaline phosphate. Then after this we incubate this in a substrate. So this substrate reacts with this HRP enzyme and give color. So this color is then detected for the detection of protein. That is, intensity of this color produced is useful in the detection of the amount of protein. Other than this, we have radioactive detection. So in this, what we do is the protein is the protein membrane, that is the nitrocellulose membrane, is placed again as the X-ray film. Then the protein bands appears as dark regions. So this is not mostly used because it is hazardous. It is expensive, health and safety risk are there. So better there are other alternatives like electrochemiluminescence. It is much better than this. So this is very rarely used. Other than that, we have fluorescent detection. Here what we do is the secondary antibody is attached to fluorophore. So this is kept in UV light. So the fluorophore is excited and gives fluorescence. This can be detected by using CCD camera, which is equipped with appropriate emission filters. So the analysis after the separation and detection, how can we analyze this is by using X-ray film scanners or charge coupled device, camera based imager, etc. So for if that is for the presence and amount of protein of interest, we can estimate it by visual analysis. That is, if the color is produced, then we can know that the protein of interest is present. And the size of the proteins can be determined by comparison with molecular weight markers, etc. So this is the overall procedure of Western blotting. For first SGS phase is done, then these proteins from the gel, separated protein from the gel is transferred to the membrane. It is then blocked, that is by using BSA or milk casein. It is washed, incubated with primary antibodies. This is done for half an hour to overnight, and then again it is washed. Then the secondary antibody, which is attached with a fluorophore or enzyme, this is incubated for half an hour, and then it is detected. The applications of Western blotting, it is more sensitive and specific for determination of size and amount of protein present in any material. It is used for confirmatory HIV test. Also, ELISA is used for HIV testing, but it is non-specific, whereas Western blotting is more specific, because by using Western blotting we can also know the size of the protein. It is referred to as to a gold standard. Other than HIV, it is also used for the diagnostic of bovine spongiform encephalopathy. So this mostly affects in cows. So when the bacterium BSC is infected in a cow, this is referred to as mad cow disease. So this other than this, we can use it as a definitive test for Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, Lyme disease, hepatitis B infection, herpes type 2 infection, etc. This Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease is degenerative fatal brain disorder which is caused by abnormal infectious protein in brain called prion. So this disease is transferred by an animal, that is this mad cow disease. When a cow is infected with BSC bacterium, and a person ingests this infected meat, then it is transferred to humans, and this is called as Creutzfeldt-Jakob. These are the references that I have used for the information in the slides present in this video. So thank you.